Recording again. Alright, so what we did, we went File, then went New, VCL Forms Application, then it will open up. Then our next step is to save it, so we click the Save All button. It will ask you where to save, so generally it wants to go to Documents, RAD Studio Projects, but last time when I showed you, we already saved one there. So you'll see if you save another one there, you'll start overwriting all the projects that's there. So that's not what we want. So what we'll rather do is I'll go to my documents, and inside here I've got a Delphi projects grade 10. Go into that one, and now for this one I'm going to create a new folder, and today's one we're doing a calculator. Calculator. Click enter, go into that folder, and then you save your unit 2. And once you've saved that, it will ask you for your project as well. Then you save that as well. It doesn't matter if it's unit 1 or 2 or 3 or project 1, 2 or 3, that doesn't matter. As long as you go and save it in its own folder, then it's good. Right, once we're there, which component do we use again that interacts with the user so that he can click it so that an action occurs? What component do we use? Yes, so that will be our button. Alright, so today we will use two more new ones. The first one is a label. So what a label does, a label is there to just give the I want to say to give the user information. So he won't work with it. What I mean with that is he won't change it, we won't display it. This is sort of going to tell the user what will happen next to it. So it's sort of like if you look on the left hand side, that word caption there, and border width and border style, all those things on that side, they are labels. Do you agree with them? We don't do anything. We'll type everything on this side. If you want to change something, it changes this side. On here on the left, it sort of just tells you what is this right side for. So these things are labels. So we'll put labels down, and then this right hand side, what we will use is edit boxes. So I just copy and then I paste the component, and then I paste another component. So I just copy them and paste them, so I've got like 3 of each. And just again, remember our save all button. Every now and again when you've got a gap, just click that. You never know when Delphi crashes and that, then you lose all of your information. So it is good if you could just save it every now and again, and then you know you don't lose any important information. Alright, then on this label, if you click on it, our caption, let's see if I can move this. Alright, so our caption, you'll see if you click on the label and we go bottom left to the object inspector, there's a caption section. So caption is what the user sees. So for us in this first one, we'll take out label 1 and we're going to type in number 1. So you can see now you can use spaces because it's just what the user sees. So choose number 1 for that one. In label 1, we take out that one's caption and we say number 2. And in this last one, we're going to take out the label 1 and we're going to say answer. And then on our button's caption, we're going to say add. And then we're going to go to our edit boxes. And then with them, you'll see they don't have caption. But what they do have is one of them that's called text. So the text one is what we see there. And for this one's text, we just want to empty it. So you just click delete and enter. And you go to that one. We go to the text, we delete it, we click enter. Just make sure when you click on the component that you click inside there and then take it out. Sometimes some people forget and they click on the component itself and just click delete, and then you delete the whole component. Which is fine, but then you just need to put it down again. And then we save it. So I'm going to quickly stop here. Those of you that are working with me. So I think see if you can create a new form. Save it for us. Put down 3 labels and 3 edit boxes with 1 button. Then you go to the captions and you change it number 1, number 2 and answer. And add for the button. And then our edit boxes, you go to the text property. And you just remove what's in there. So that your screen looks like mine. Quickly try that, and then once you've done it, just let me know. Maybe send me a thumbs up or something in the question section. Because we're going to interact with the user with these boxes, what we do need to know is we need to know what their names are. Otherwise, in our coding section, we're going to struggle to know which edit box we're busy with. So you'll see one of the properties when you select the edit box and you go, so not to text now, but to the name. You'll see like mine is called edit1. We need to change that name so that we can call it something that's applicable. So it's an edit box. So all components, when you rename them, your first 3 characters must be small letters, and then in that small letters, you must basically give an indication of what type of component it is. So in this case, these ones are edit boxes. So they start with EDT. And then your next part, you start with a capital letter. You may not use any special characters, so no spaces or pluses or ands and stuff like that. But then give it a name that will tell you what will be used here. So this edit box degree is for number 1. So I'm going to call mine EDT and then number 1. So there's no spaces. And then you click enter. This next one, it's also an edit box. So I'm going to call it EDT and number 2. And this last one is for answer. So I'm going to call mine EDT answer. Now, these names that we give to our components, technically they don't matter. It is your program, it is your component, so you can call it whatever you want to. You can call this apple and pear and bananas if you wanted to. It's just when you start with coding, then you need to remember, okay, I need to get information from apple and pear, and I'm going to put the answer into bananas. So then it's a bit tricky if you give like funny names like that to exactly remember what should happen where. So now if you start with EDT, then we know it's edit boxes. And then because we called that one number 1 and number 2, we know we're going to extract from them. And we're going to put the answer into the answer box. And then we do the same with our button. You'll see now, like with this program, we're going to have quite a few buttons at the end. So then our code also looks temakar if you'll see the name is just button 1. Then you'll have a button 1, button 2, button 3. And we won't actually remember which button is which. So our buttons, we also change their names. They start with a BTN because it's a button. And I'm going to call mine BTN add. Our labels, however, remember they're just there to tell the user something. So we're not going to use them in code. So we don't need to worry about their names. If you really wanted to, you could click on them and you could also rename them to like a LBL something, LBL number 1. But as I said, if you're not going to use the component in your coding, then you don't need to rename it. So all this renaming is just to help us in our coding section so that we can keep track of what are we doing with which components. So our 3 edit boxes, their names, so the name property starts with EDT, and then I called mine number 1, number 2, and answer. all with no spaces inside. And my button, the use name property, I changed to btn and then add, because this is my add button. Code. Okay, so our next step, once we designed our screen, as I said, we change our captions and we change the text so that it looks right. Once that is done, we change the names of the components that we're going to use in our code. And then what we can do is we can double click on the button. So you'll always double click on the component which will activate your code, which 99% of the time will be a button. So let's double click on our button, and then you'll see we'll go to our coding section, that place where we were last time. Alright, so now at this stage I'm going to talk a bit first. I'm going to explain some stuff, and then I'll give you time to just do it yourself. Alright, so I'm going to put some comments in. All the comments I'll do now, as previous times, I will copy my code. I'll put it on for you so that you guys can just get it from Google Classroom, so you don't need to worry about typing everything I type. Obviously, if there's something I say that I don't type that you also want, you can just make notes of that if you want to. Alright, so the first thing I want to say is let's write a little bit about the components that we've done. Alright, so our components that we have been working on. So our first one was a label. That is just to give the user info, and we use the caption property to change how it looks. The next one we had was our edit component. That will be used for input and output. You'll see now we're going to use that now. Instead of, remember last time we did that champagne.show message dialog where we displayed something for them. So this is sort of the same but a little bit different. So that show message is also an output component for us, but now we'll just, instead of displaying it in a pop-up box, we'll display it inside those components, those edit boxes. So our edit box will be used for input and output. We use the text property there, and then we also had a button, and this is used for the user to activate code. Activate code. I think maybe let's in brackets. So if you wanted to change your label, the name would start with an LBL. For our edit boxes, the name should be EDT, and then for our buttons, the name should be BTN. Alright, so that's what we've done in our design screen. So our next step is variables. You know what, I'm gonna just move this down a bit. I'm gonna just take this out of the button, so I'm gonna put it just on top. There's the components. So this is, when we double click the button, we got this piece that says procedure form 2, and then you'll see button add click. So this sort of tells us which button are we busy with. And then there's a begin and an end, which is like our brackets. So just look here where I go. So I go between the procedure and the begin. This section is for variables. Alright, now variables are basically containers to keep values for us. So it is important, you know, you get different types of containers. If you've got somebody that wants to immigrate to another country, they get one of those big metal containers to put in all their, if they've got a car or if they've got like building stuff, they put it in there. You also get, let's say you just want to drink something, your container you'll use as a glass. If you want to take some food to school, you'll use like a Tupperware, a sandwich box. If you want to keep something cold, you'll use like a cooler box. So all these containers are made for a specific purpose, and that's the same way variables are. There's lots of different types of variables we get to store different types of values. We're just going to use 5. In your schooling career, you're going to use 5 of them. For this year, we're basically going to focus on 3 of them. And then from next year, we'll start using some of the others. So our important ones that we want to use now is the first one is integers. So what type of value do you think you can put into an integer? Yes, that's a keyword I wanted. So any whole number, any number without a fraction. So any number without a fraction. So any type of whole number you can put in there. 100% right. Now his friend is called double. So double is for any real number. So that is basically a number with a fraction. Now, if you want to put a whole number into a double, do you think that could work? Can I put the number 5 into double? Who wants to take a guess? Alright, so good guess, even though it's wrong. So the answer is yes, actually, because if I take a whole number like 5 and I put it into double, it will just become 5.0. So it sort of gets a fraction, but just a zero fraction. And then it will work fine. So that works fine. But the opposite isn't true. We can't lose information. So I can't take a 5.2 and put that into an integer because then we'll lose the point 2. So that can't work. So any integer you can put in a double, but we can't do the reverse. Somebody have a question? I heard something. No. All right. So if you've got questions, please just tell me. Just shout out. I'll try to look at the questions every now and again. Or if you've got a question, you can post it there by questions. I'll try to have a look there every now and again. Alright, so that's our two number ones. Either integers for whole numbers or use doubles with fractions. Then the other important one we've got is string. So I'm to say string is for anything. And when I say anything, it means I can put numbers in there as well. Or words or sentences. I mean, like if you're writing an essay for English, if you wanted to put the number 5 there, you can, and that's fine. And that's sort of where a string comes in. A string is for any character that you would use in the alphabet for like an English essay. So anything you can put in there. There is a trick to it, however. I want to I have some of you to guess for me again. If I've got two strings, and the one string I give a value of 2, and the other string I also give a value of 2, and I add them together, what would 2 plus 2 give me if both of them are strings? Well done, that's very good. Yes, because they're just seen as words, it will take the one 2 and add the other 2 just next to it. So even though we can put numbers into strings, we can't do mathematical calculations with them. If we however put the 2's into integers, and then I say 2 plus 2 and both of them are integers, then we'll get an answer of 4. So that will work fine because they are seen as numbers. But while if they're a string, if we've got a 2 plus a 2, we'll just get 22 because they are seen as words or just characters, not numbers. So a 2 and a 2 is two 2's, and that's sort of how that works. Alright, then the other two we won't use a lot this year. The one is Boolean, that is only for true or false. So you can't put anything else into it. Only the value is true or false. And the last one is char, which is for characters. So character is a single of anything of a string basically. So character can also take anything, however it must only be one character. So it can't be more than one thing. And that's the 5 we'll be using in your schooling career. Oh, yeah. I deleted it all. Oh, yeah, man. Let me see. I can't even undo. Yeah. Right. Guys. Alright, so let's quickly just run through this again. So in this section, we've got our variables, which are containers. So we've got integers, whole numbers. And we've got double, which are real numbers. Fractions. Whole numbers without fractions. Then we had our string, which is anything, where we did our 2 plus 2, which gives us 22. We've got boolean, which is true or false, and we've got characters, which is one character. Um, yeah, I think that's what it. Alright, so what we do, you need to, in this section, just before the begin, you actually need to create all the variables you think you might need. So in this section, you will write var. So after your procedure, you write var, and then in here, you'll create the variables you want. So in our case, when you want to do the add button, how many variables do you think? How many containers do we need to keep values that we're busy with? I want to take a guess, otherwise we'll wait to get try for us again. So I want to know, how many variables do you think we need for this button, for the add button? Okay, why do you need so many? Why do you want to put into all of them? Okay, so let's look at this. For our particular add button, what we want to do is we want to take that number and that number, add them together, and put the answer there. So let's give it over to somebody else. Ilani, what do you think? How many variables do you think we need if we want to take that number and that number, add them together, and put the answer there? How many variables do you think we'll need for that program? Two is a good try. Two is very close. We can make it work with two though. So let's see. So our first one, what data types do you think they should be? These variables that we want to. Now we want to add two numbers to each other. So what data type, which one? Do you think we will use integer, double, string, boolean, or char? Which one will we use? Let's give that over to somebody else. Yeah, maybe? Tell me, what do you think? What data type will our variables be? Yes, well done. So if you thought double, that's also 100% fine. A double is maybe better because you can cover anything with it. But generally, I like integer as well. Most of our numbers will be whole numbers. So I think I also agree. Let's go with integers. So what you do is it's first your variable name. So what we'll do is, so we'll call it, let's say num1, num1. Then we'll say that will be of type integer. So the way we create variables is your variable name, then a colon, and then your data type, and a semicolon. So we've got number one, which will be an integer, and we'll have number two, which will be an integer. The spaces doesn't matter so much. Um, okay, no problem. All right, so we've got our two variables. We created one for number one and one for number two. So what this actually does is this just creates a section in memory in RAM where we can store a value for later use. Is now we need to just get the first value. So our variable number one, to give it a value, you'll say colon equals. So number one must get the value. Where will number one's value come from? Where can we get this variable number one's number, do you think? From this edit box, do you agree? The user will put it in here. So what we do, it means number one must get his value from an edit box. So you say edt, and now if you say control space, control and spacebar, it gives you the options of all your edit boxes because we renamed them all with edt. That's what's nice about creating them with the same starting value. If you say the first three letters, control space, it gives you a list of all those types of variables. And we want to use number one. But now what you have to remember with number one, this component, edit number one, has got all of these properties. It's got an alignment, align with margins, anchors, auto set, auto size, beveled edges. All these properties are inside that one component. Which one of these properties that we work with to change what is written inside here? Who can tell me? Which property did we change to make this empty? So remember we changed name to just give it his name, but we used another property to actually change how it looked here to make this, yes. So you'll say your component name dot, and then we say text. So this will give us what is written inside that block. Now we do have just a small problem. Let me quickly play this. Let's see what it says. So you'll see what it says, tells us here at the bottom. If you play it, at the bottom it gives an error and it tells you incompatible types, integer and t-caption. Because what we did here with this caption part, or with this component, when we're working with or talking with a user, Most programming languages, they love to use strings. Because a string, remember with our string data type, a string can a string can take any data type. So if the user types in numbers or words or whatever, the program will always work, won't get clashes. That's why they love to use strings. But remember what we said, we wanted this number one. We're making a calculator, so we need it as a number. So this part here will get it out of the edit box for us, but it gets it to us as a string. So what we need to do is we need to convert this thing from a string into an integer so that sorry, we need, we need to you can just quiet this dog. No, Marshall, stop it, man. Alright, sorry. So what we need to do is we need to convert the string into an integer to put it in there. So luckily we've got a thing to convert that, and that is called an integer dot parse int. That should be a capital letter I. So integer dot parse int. Just and then sorry, wrong words. Do you agree this is a string? I just told you this is a string. So we'll actually use string to int. That we'll use. So string to int will change the string into an integer. So that will change this string into an integer so that we can put it in there. To agree, my num1 I created of type integer. So num1 is an integer. But then what we get out of our edit box is a string. So we can't just put a string into an integer. So we need to just convert it. And we've got a thing that just makes it, that does that for us. This will change a string into an integer for us. And then this conversion will happen. So now we've got our first number. Out of this edit box, we change it to an integer, we put it in there. Now we've got our first number. Now what we do is we just have to do the same with number 2. Number 2 must get a value. Out of edit box, number 2. And we're also going to use the text property. But again, same thing will happen. This is a string, and we want to put it into an integer. So we need to change our string into an integer so that we can do that conversion. Now we extracted number 1, made it an integer, put it in there, and we extracted number 2, made it an integer, and put it into there. And then let me just save that. And I want to know, so on my screen, so this line here, did you realize when I double clicked, this was done for me by the button. I didn't change anything here. So remember to never change anything in this line. It's sort of like if you didn't type the code, never change the code. That's a general rule of thumb. That's really good. I think what Owetu maybe did is he went and changed the name. He saw mine had PTN and his didn't. So he went and added that. And what that did, then this method didn't correlate with your button. Your button was still just called add itself. And then in there you now changed it. So now the two didn't line up. So when we fixed it, then both of them was the same name. Then it was sorted. So remember to never change anything in the lines that you didn't type. If the code gets given to you, leave as is. Do not change. Alright, so let's quickly finish this. We've actually just got 2 lines of code, then we're done with this button. Then I'll give you some time to try the rest and ask me questions. So what do you think is the next thing we should do now? So I've got the first number, I've got the second number. And remember this, the button we're busy with is the add button. So what do you think? What's the next thing we should do? Shallow, what do you think? Is everyone still there? No, no problem. Yes. What do you think? Okay. So, oh, you want to put the answer in there? Okay. Yeah, we can do it that way. Yeah, you can actually. Then we don't need another variable. Um, I want to so that way to go Charlotte's way will work fine. I just don't want to do it today because I want to break it up into smaller steps. The way that she wants to do it, she wants to do two things in one, which is fine. Later on, once we get used to this, if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to. I want to break it up into one more step. So this is our input. This is our input part. We got the two numbers. So I want us to create another variable. Let's call another one called ons, and also make this one an integer. And now what we want to do is, do you agree the button is the add button? So let's add these two numbers to each other. So the answer variable must get the value of our number one variable plus our number two variable. That will add them together and the answer will be placed into that variable. So it's always your right hand side gets assigned to the left hand side. Like our edit number one, the number was taken out there, converted, placed into there. Edit number two, the number was taken from there, converted, and placed in there. Now we're adding the two numbers and placing the answer into there. Now our last step would be what Shiloh wanted to do. So once we've got the answer, now we want to display the answer. So do you agree? We want to now put the answer into that edit box. We want to put the answer into this edit box, the one that's called EDT answer. So because it must go into him, we write him first. So our edit answer must get a value. But which property? Always when you've got a component, you have to say which property. So which property do we want to change of our edit answer? So remember when you wanted to display nothing there, which property did we change to make it empty? Where to? What do you think? So when we wanted to make this edit box empty, which property did we change? Yes, well done. So our edit box, the text property, should now become the answer. So we want to take our answer variable and put it in there. But now we've got the same problem. Answer is an integer, but our component.text needs it a string. So what do you think we'll write to convert this integer and make it a string? Who wants to take a guess? if when we wanted to make a string, an integer, we said string to int, so we can use control space, but what we do first is we think of how do we change, and do you agree? We want to do the reverse of that. We now want to make an integer into a string. Yeah. So we just write that. So it's our int. You can use control space, and then you'll see there's an option into string, into str. So you'll see this is just the opposite of that. So what we've done, this is our input, those two lines, then this one was our processing, and then this one is our output. Alright, let me quickly run my program. So I click play. Now I can type a number in there. We type 23. In my next box, I type in 55. I click my add button, and there's my answer. Alright, so quick recap. After you created your button and you double click on it, we write var and we create the variables we might use. Then inside our begin, we start with our input section. So what do we need for this button? What I need is I need two numbers. So my edit number 1, I use a text property, but then this gives me a string. So I change my string into an integer so that I can put it into the integer variable. Then I do the same with number 2. From my edit box number 2, I use the text property that gives me a string. I change that string into an int, display it into num2. Put it into num2. Now num1 and num2 has got those values. Let me just see, I hear a little bit of an echo. I'll wait till I think it's yours. If you can mute for me, please. No problem. Alright, so now the numbers are in num1 and num2. What we do then, we add them together and we just put it into a new variable. So that's our processing. Nothing gets extracted from anywhere or displayed anywhere. We just do our processing we want to do. And now we want to display the answer. So as our output, in that edit box, in the text property, we want to put, what do we want to put there? We want to put the answer variable. But our answer variable is an integer. So I need to change my integer into a string so that I can put it into that component. So you'll see it's the opposite from that one. Our input, we get a string, we make it an integer so that we can use it, but then we display it, we have to make our integer a string so that we can display it. And then that is our add button. So I will leave this code on, and anybody that got any help needed, you ask me. What I want the rest of you to do, we go to our tool palette, we type in BUT to get a button, and we put down, so I put down one button, I'm going to just copy it, paste it twice, so that we put down basically 3 more buttons. For these buttons, we go to their caption. Let's go to the caption first. Go to the caption. I want a subtract. And I want a multiply. And I want a divide. And then what you also do is you click on the buttons, we just go change their name so that we can keep track of which one we're busy with. So that it's not called button 1, but this should be called btn subtract and btn multiply and btn divide. Alright, so after you got your add to work, see if you can get the subtract, multiply, and divide. Yes, talk to me. No, if you change the name first, it will show it there. But then what you do is you just go up to the caption part, and then by caption just take out the btn there. Yes. Yes, it will. No problem. So let me just. So I'm gonna pause for now again the recording. Alright, so our subtract button. We just created the three variables, extracted our two numbers again, then we subtracted them, and then we displayed the answer. For our multiply button, we will do the same. We'll get our two numbers, and then instead of subtracting them, we'll use the asterisk, the star. The star means multiply in coding, and then display the answer.